founder, you can take it away from here.
Thank you, Chris. I'm going to cover a few things here, only a few minutes to go through this, but I thought a little history would be interesting, and of course I can tell a story or two along the way. One of my favorite mobility experiences was very, very early on. If anyone remembers what a Palm Pilot was, they were first built in 1995, and I had a friend at the University of Dayton that just thought he could solve the world's problems with this particular device. They were not wireless. You carried around a list of tasks with you that you received from a PC via a cradle, a serial port. And we actually did some pretty interesting things with those devices for a few years. Fairly forward-thinking guy and an interesting implementation. We learned a lot going through it. And this was before two-way wireless mobility actually came along, and with any gusto. So, in getting ready to talk about this today, I saw something come across my desktop just 2 days ago from the Wall Street Journal where they mentioned that PC shipments had plunged nearly 20%. That's the deepest drop in over 20 years. So go back to the year 2000-ish. Gartner says PC shipments are down. Is mobility really important? I think with the amount of use that we all give our smartphones and the amount of communications that we take advantage of today, whether it's SMS or video talk or normal communications, it's easy to see that most everyone now has some form of personal communication with them, and that these devices are in fact replacing PCs in some ways, that the country's just not using as many of them as we may have just a few years ago. An Italian inventor, Giovanni Marconi, Giovanni is his middle name. I couldn't pronounce his first name, so I used Giovanni. He transmitted the first wireless signal in 1895, pretty successful with it. After a few months of broadcasting, his business development team shut him down for lack of a clear business case. There wasn't really anybody for Giovanni to talk with. Real modern two-way communication came about in the 1970s. A Motorola engineer named Martin Cooper developed two-way communication, tested in 74, and some of the larger, kludgier telephones started showing up in bags or in automobiles, or something here on the right that you might have seen in the movie Wall Street, I believe. 1G, or first generation mobile communications, were first deployed broadly by Nippon in the late 70s. They were prevalent in the 80s, and all of this was primarily analog technology. 2G global systems for mobile communications, GSM, brought us digital switching, made Nokia famous for sure. It enabled SMS and some email transmission. Roaming became a bit of a reality. It was a pricey reality, but you could roam in the early to mid 90s, and that's what was a prevalent communication tool in the 90s, was 2G. 3G brought us another acronym, Universal Mobile Terrestrial Telecommunications Systems, UMTS. I actually eliminated about 30 acronyms from these slides over the last week or so. There's just so many daggone protocols and acronyms out there. It didn't make any sense to me. I didn't think they had any value, so I've only kept a few of them here. But 3G is pretty synonymous with UMTS. You got a higher data rate with 3G. That helped bring video to the phone or to the mobile application. Some of the early mapping and location tracking capabilities came with 3G. Smartphones certainly took off, BlackBerry and the iPhone. It also enabled social media, gaming, and some TV streaming. All of this really was brought about through the use of 3G. 4G primarily enhanced on 3. It had higher data rates, and significantly more devices were able to be supported. When you talk about new communication standards, wireless or wired, there's 2 or 3 things you have to look at, and that's just raw throughput. You know, how much data can we move at any one time? It's also how many devices can you support in a given period of time. And lastly, it's about latency, and that is how clean is the signal, how much data loss is there, how much packet loss is there, are we in a high or low latency environment. But driving down latency, driving up throughput, and enabling more and more devices to communicate, basically this evolution is what's created what we use without thinking a whole lot today. Is our primary methodology for communicating. The data rate's much higher in G4, and high def video was also enabled with 4G just because of the throughput. You're starting to hear a lot more about 5G and ultra fast today. Dedicated 5G is going to be a core network. What that means is you're going to see the need for specific hardware to push 5G. It's evolving over time. It manages multiple waves and spectrum simultaneously. It's very sophisticated hardware, as it were. I think you're going to see the rollout happen fairly slowly, because these companies are going to have to replace their old equipment. The costs are very high, so it's going to be use case in my mind. You're going to see 5G in very dense areas where there's a lot of people. Again, 5G is not only faster, but its biggest attribute is its ability to handle thousands and thousands of signals or devices in a very crowded environment. Think of a sports stadium with 60,000 people sitting next to one another. 5G is not without its fun. There is some concern about there around safety, and I'll let you all read up on that at your leisure. But it's coming. Excuse me. It's coming. It's good, fast, and really is a game changer. It's been interesting to me, most of my adult career really in technology, to watch how capabilities and functionality in business applications or enterprise applications, that they move simultaneously or in concert with bandwidth and availability. When we first started using PCs and the internet, with 56K dial-up modems and the CDs that AOL was so happily sending us in the mail. A lot of that then was text-based, and everything has evolved over time based on this communication capability, right? The faster the communication gets, the more nodes we can connect, the more we can accomplish, the value of the network, the value of the information. It improves exponentially. In many ways, it is the medium is the message, if anyone ever read Marshall McLuhan, Once Upon a Time. So 3 things we want to try to cover here for you today. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the mobility offerings by Maximo, even MRO. MRO was purchased by IBM in 2006, so there's some overlap there with some products from that period of time. What IBM products look like today, there are a plethora of third-party offerings, obviously on a system as robust as Maximo, and hopefully give some insight into how to approach a decision, whether you're looking to buy new or you're looking to make a change or to upgrade what you have. Hopefully we can give you a little insight on where's this going and what's next. So I went back as far as 05, just because that was the summer before the IBM acquisition. The product then was the MXES Mobile Suite. You had Maximo Mobile, you had work management, you had inventory management. All of this was running on V411 of Maximo. The MXES Mobile Suite continued to evolve through 7 and 8. IBM had made their acquisition. The nomenclature changed to Maximo Mobile. Maximo Mobile's had a number of different names over the last 15 years. It gets a little confusing, but I'll try to stay on point with it as I go through these next couple of slides. The Maximo Mobile application at this time added a couple of new apps, the Maximo Mobile Service Desk and the Maximo Mobile Work Manager. That included calibration, and if memory serves, that was primarily rolled out for the pharma people. Mobile 7.1 brought along numerous enhancements. We were able to support mobile assets, work classifications, and a few other things. MXES Mobile 7.1.1 from 2009 to 2015, more support, more functionality. Remember, the bandwidth gets better, the communication gets better. So now we're able to support linear assets, crew management. It's available in over a dozen languages at the time, and it continues to be enhanced through 2015. In 2009, and you'll notice a lot of these things overlap. It's kind of the nature of the beast. We were introduced to Maximo Everyplace, Maximo Core 7115. Everyplace supported different browsers, iPhones and Androids as well. It was a connected use device only. That is, it always had to be connected back to the mothership. It did not work disconnected mode, and it continues today due to its disconnected abilities. Maximo 76214, 2014. Everyplace is now part of Core Maximo. Everyplace is still available today. Version 7612. So we've had Everyplace in any place. I remember an embarrassing situation in front of a group of partners many years ago where an IBM exec presenting from a slide deck that was obviously not hers, kept confusing anywhere and every place, and finally said she referred to it as Maximo whatever. It did liven the crowd a tad. It can be confusing. In 2012, IBM acquired Worklight, an Israeli company. Great products and great functionality. Their master plan was to go to one platform that would operate mobility across both the Maximo and the Tri-Riga platforms. Anywhere continues to evolve for another 7 or 8 years. It has had a pretty good run. Work centers evolved between 2015 and 2020. Many people took advantage of these. They're still in use today by a lot of folks. And the most recent Maximo Mobile EAM product released in 2020. It's as easy as downloading it from the App Store or the Play Store. It's available to run on 4, 6, 1, 2 or better. It does require a separate server, and that's there primarily to manage the app points. There are numerous third-party applications. In the next day here, we're going to hear from a half a dozen of what we consider to be some of the better applications available, and people will be able to answer questions specific to their applications and tools. Everyone has a little different way of going about it. Some functionalities lend themselves better to certain vertical markets, depending on what you're working in. But I think it's going to be very informative and educational next 24 hours here as we listen to our sponsors speak to us. From my mind, and this is just Steve talking here, I think when you're looking at mobility products, there's probably a half a dozen, there may be a couple more considerations that you should make. I believe first and foremost that you got to think about a mobile product from an upgradability perspective. You know, how will it handle the next versions? How easily will it adapt to the upgrades moving forward? How easily will it adapt to changes in operating systems and in broadcast systems? Hardware and utility are important. I think that a lot of time people get wrapped around the axle about what the hardware platform is going to be. Is it specific to this use case, or is it just another application on a phone or a smart device that we already have? I think the dedicated hardware scenario has its place in certain industries, but there's a cost associated with that. That rugged hardware is very expensive, and the more the applications evolve, I think the less need there is for that sort of stuff. Obviously, if you're in mining or military, there's going to be use cases for hardened systems from a hardware perspective, but more often than not, I think the average smartphone is going to get the job done at a considerably less price point. When you're looking at mobile applications, you should certainly consider the ease of configuration. Is it easy enough that you might, in fact, configure your system yourself? If you do need consultants, or if you do need help, is that a large undertaking? Is that a time-consuming undertaking, or is that something that's relatively easy to do? It's a big consideration in my mind as you move forward. I think the ability to beta test your own data with a system is pretty important. It's one thing to watch the demo, and it's another thing to see your data operating inside of a system and have the ability to work with it and see how it functions and how it applies within someone else's environment. And the last thing, and I'll try to emphasize this, it's time to value. In my view, mobility changes, technology in general changes so very quickly. Mobility not being any exception. The mobile environment changes almost monthly, certainly every 6 months. There's new hardware, there's new functionality, operating systems, capabilities, speeds, players in the marketplace. If you have to spend 18 or 20 months getting a system up and online, you know, have you missed your point of entry already? I think you want to look to systems that can be up and on and valuable and providing value to you as quickly as possible. I think it's just one of the most important parts of the whole thing. Evaluating products and making good decisions is certainly important, but once you've made the decision, just how fast can you get your system up and on? I think that's a major consideration and a big part of what it costs to do these sort of projects. Going forward with mobility, I do think there's a couple of things. First of all, there's satellite communications real. Starlink exists. We're moving information now with lasers, and it's fast. It's going to enable the coverage of the planet in a way which we've never had before. Some of the most remote parts of this world are going to be covered with satellite communications here in the next year or so. And this opens up a whole plethora of opportunities for us to work in areas connected where we had not been able to do so before. That speed will also make our ability to communicate at greater distances, thinking of interplanetary communications is for one. But the other thing that's going on is you're seeing a lot more compute being deployed at the edge. That is, the compute is being utilized at the point where the information is being collected, and only after it has been massaged or managed is it then brought back home. So there's a lot more power, I'll say, the communications capabilities, the computation capabilities, a lot more of that's happening on the edge rather than at the spoke, if you think of it as a hub and spoke system. And this mesh network where there's smart devices everywhere, and many of them are now occurring on the periphery, makes the future of mobility pretty exciting, I believe. I think it's going to be a pretty interesting next decade to see how we can leverage that and what things can be done with it. I appreciate you listening in. There's a link here if you'd like to connect with me on LinkedIn. Joe will make this session available, I'm sure, for rebroadcast if there's something on there you felt worthwhile that you might want to grab a hold of. And I believe it's time for Q&A.
Steve, is Maximo Every Place going away?
They haven't announced it. I think that eventually it will probably be replaced, but there's nothing that I'm aware of. Maybe someone else chime in, but I think it's going to be around for a while.
And why do you think there's so many different mobile products for Maximo?
Well, there's so many diverse use cases, I think. It's so different working in in a quarry or a mine, or working in a laboratory, on a bucket truck down here in Florida trying to hang electric wires. I mean, all the different ways that you can use mobility. I think everyone just kind of takes the capability and lends it to their unique use case. And there's no one size fits all. So you end up with a whole lot of different products depending on what you need, where you need it.
I got another question here. Is there a comparison of all the tools that gets published periodically? I don't know of one. Do you know of one, Steve?
Certainly would think somebody would have done that by now, but I can't say that I've seen that, no.
If anybody does know about that, if you could post that in the more community, we'll make sure we get that information out. Let's see. Question: Are you all seeing an increase in the use of mobile to initiate service requests from the non-maximal user base of an organization? So I guess the question is there more use of mobile for SR creation for the typical non-maximal user?
I believe I would say yes, Chris.
Okay, and maybe we'll open up a discussion for that as well in the more community. Maybe we'll get some, because the one thing about maximal, at least from my experience, I know it started out for me in manufacturing, but quickly, since we're OGs here, quickly it moved out into so many different types of industries, both service and otherwise, and the use cases are dramatically all over the place. A couple more questions here. How does licensing differ between the products?
I think that's another webinar.
Well, I think one of the nice things about each of the vendors here, that they should be able to discuss that, and they'll get your contact information for them as well. And I'll make sure that they're aware of that being a question. And then if they have time to address it during their demonstrations tomorrow, they can, or we can find a way to get you access to those people and then get those questions answered. Let's see, next question here. Android or iOS? Should this be up to the organization you work for? Is there a clear, better operating system?
I think you'd have a hard time proving a clear, better operating system. It's just depends on use case, I believe. Price point certainly pushes it. In my experience, it's almost a necessity. You're going to have to support them both because your workforce is going to be, 60-40 one way or the other. Unless you're going to provide devices for everybody separately, I don't think there's going to be an end to that duopoly of operating systems anytime soon.
Okay. What mobile solutions are application suite compatible? Wow.
Well, I think we're going to have to throw that over the fence to the individual vendors to talk about how well their particular products blend into the application suite.
I guess we'll reach out to them. Yeah, Joe and I'll reach out to them to make sure that they can cover that tomorrow when they do their individual demos. Let's see, next question. Are you seeing customers moving away from rugged devices and towards smartphones and iPads?
I think given the use case that you're seeing a lot more of that, I don't think that people are as concerned about rugged in day-to-day use. Most people are used to carrying a phone in their pocket, so the need for something rugged really depends on where you are, what the use case is, and I do believe people are more and more comfortable with smartphones now than they were just 5 years ago.
All right, well, it looks like that's about all the questions now. So I think one of the things we'll do, the two big things that came out of the questions, I think, are making sure each of the companies identify their application suite ready and licensing options. So we'll make sure we pass that on. I guess the only other will be, do they run Android and iOS? I think they all do, but we'll make sure we bring that to them as well so that could get covered. And we should start moving over to the next session. So next session should be available to you in a moment. Oh, let's see. Steve, you always harp on security. What special issues exist with disconnected mobile devices?
Was that directed at me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the big thing there is you have to have mobile device management systems in place. If they're disconnected, your biggest risk is if they're lost or stolen, so that there are products once that device does come back online that will clean that device or disable that device. But you do need to have some sort of soft security that will help ensure the safety of whatever might be on that device in the event that it's misplaced or taken.
Ah, yes, that's right. Mobile device management. Forgot about that. That's installed
Yes,
on my phone.
Mine as well.
Okay. Yeah. I think the same guy installed it on yours and mine.
I bet he did.
All right, folks. So let's go ahead on over to the next session, and then you'll be able to dig right into a specific. And we will go ahead and follow up with all the vendors and get some additional information over to them that they can incorporate into what they're discussing tomorrow. And maybe we'll even be able to get some of that comparison stuff done and get that out in a more community with the recording. Thank you very much for your questions. We really do get a lot more done with your questions and your input, so we really appreciate that, and look forward to getting more of this done today and tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you all. Enjoy the next 2 days.